It's time to talk fantasy football. It's time to let 'em know. Where you let us crunch the numbers while you crush the competition. So grab your playbooks and crack a cold one, because here's your hosts, Teak and Baney.
Welcome back, guys. Let 'em know podcast, another episode of our sits. So we're, as you notice, there's only two of us. We're missing Teak. He came down with something. He's feeling under the weather. Teak, we wish you the best. Hope you get well soon. Not going to be the same without you. So me and Baney, we got to do our best. So something Baney touched on last episode on the starts was who's climbing up your draft board looking ahead to 2024. Now, it seems fitting, Baney, if you agree, during the sits episode, we're going to see who's fallen down the ladder. Baney, who do you think is going to drop down a little bit during your draft board this 2024 upcoming fantasy season?
Yeah, so Beds, a little blind test really quick. Player A, player B.
Ooh.
Player A, career quarterback, all right? So passing yards, 11,490 yards, 56 touchdowns, 37 interceptions. Player B, 12,512 yards, 62 touchdowns, 40 interceptions. Which one would you rather have?
This is when I need Teak. This is when I'm missing him. I might put him on the speaker, see if he'll answer, in case he's not snoozing. Say player A again real quick.
11,490 yards, 56 touchdowns, 37 interceptions. Player
Okay.
B, 12,512, 62 touchdowns, 40 interceptions.
I feel like fantasy-wise, you got to go with the most touchdowns. I may be wrong. This is where I need Teak. I'm going to go player B.
Well, you just picked Danny Dimes over Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is hiding down my draft board. I want nothing to do with them. There are so many better options at quarterback. I tell you what, I would even consider definitely these rookie quarterbacks in this class coming in over him. Dude, Trevor Lawrence, everybody loves him. Don't know why, to be honest with you. To me, he just gives Tebow effect. All the hype, all the praise, really nothing to really back it up. That being said, people will probably hate this take because some people just love Trevor Lawrence. I am not one of those people. I think he's been underwhelming at quarterback. The turnovers, I think, as of lately have really come to fruition. Not a Trevor Lawrence fan. And as you just saw, the Danny Dimes comparison, not a fan.
Yeah, Danny Dimes. I mean, people are saying he might not have a job with the Cutlets coming in town, but he got benched last week, so who knows what's going on over there. That's going to be something to watch. As far as Trevor Lawrence goes, I don't know. I mean, yeah, he's going to slide down. I'm not sure if I'm ready to give up completely, though. I mean, he's had a lot of hiccups with his wide receiver injuries, but where he was drafted and the talk and the hype and the caliber and what we've seen him do, flashes here and there, I think he could bounce back. But yeah, definitely good call, Baney, sliding down on the draft board. So my first one, I'll go now. I'm going to the running back position. It's going to pain me to say. So I think you know where I'm going with this one. So I think each year Najee Harris is going to keep sliding down a little bit more and more and more. So I know 2 years ago he was a first-round draft pick in most fantasy leagues. This year he was a third-round draft pick. He's going to slide down. I mean, he doesn't look to be the same player. His explosiveness, I know he has a lot of power. I don't want to take that away from him. Running up the middle, but when there's lanes, there's a lot of times, why didn't he cut outside? He just doesn't have that cut and move ability. So I think he's going to lose some fantasy value there with that elusiveness. So he's like I say, he's a strong runner. He just doesn't have that explosiveness cut outside and make those plays. So therefore, I mean, I think he's going well past the third round this upcoming year.
Yeah. For context, we had a major group chat discussion between whether Jaylen Warren or Najee was going to be the future. And yeah, I think we're finally seeing that it's definitely going to be Warren. And he's really just earned it. Truthfully, like I feel like the Steeler way has always been they have their guys and they stay loyal to their guys. And I just feel like Najee, it's finally just it's kind of undeniable. The pop that you get when you put Warren on the field is just not even close, I think, anymore. And to be honest with you, the best Steelers teams I can think of has always had a 1-2 punch. Like, I mean, the Bus and Willie Parker. I mean, Le'Veon even had, his split little duo time, and then he had a massive year where he was just the guy. But the best Steelers teams I can think of have that 1-2 punch. That being said, they really just have a hard time trying to define what the 1-2 punch role is on this team. And I think Warren should definitely be the one. And I don't think it's close.
Yeah, Najee could be that punch. Like I said, the power's there. It's just that ability to cut outside and make those moves in space.
Yeah, it's.
So we'll move on to the second one. Bainey, you got a second one, right? Tell us where you're going.
Definitely got a second one. And my second one was one that I stood on at the beginning of this year as well. And that is Aaron Rodgers. I know it's like low-hanging fruit. He's hurt, but he's kind of got a history. I mean, I got foot fracture in 2006, concussions in 10. We got broken collarbone in 13, calf tear, calf strain 14, 16, collarbone 17, concussion again, MCL in 18, toe fracture 21, more fractures in 22. And then all of camp, my biggest red flag all of camp was the calf issues he was having. Calf issues usually lead to an Achilles pop. It's just kind of the trend. Like that is attached, the tightness, and honestly, the turf that they play on, that Jet Stadium has been eating people alive these last few years. And it's not close. It is crazy. The defensive end for the Dolphins shortly after that. There's been ACLs left and right at that place. I don't know. I mean, you can't really factor in turf into draft stock, to be honest with you. But the injuries in the Achilles at 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, I know you'd probably draft him later anyway. He's not a rushing quarterback, but it's a liability in my eyes, and I don't like question marks when I draft my players, specifically 40-year-old players. Outside of a kicker, I don't know if I would trust anybody that old. So, yeah, Aaron Rodgers, unfortunately, he's not going to sniff my draft board, but I think he should definitely be down on others. I know he's got his Rodgers faithful. Unfortunately, I'm just not one of those guys.
Yeah, Bainey, I'm glad you mentioned him. There was a lot of hype going into this Jets offense, especially with Hard Knocks and everything. Everyone watches those, and they build their – I know that's why I was excited to get Garrett Wilson. I mean, he's been – so he has his shine, has his moments, but that's why I was big on him, Hard Knocks. But yeah, I mean, I would go as far as saying in 10, especially 10, 12-man leagues, he might not even get drafted. I mean, like you said, the injuries are piling up over and over again. It's kind of fantasy-wise, you got to kind of prove yourself. It's a prove yourself game. So that's a good. Definitely fallen down the draft boards. Like I said, I know a lot of players I drafted with were excited about him and thought they were going to get a lot of good value, and it turned out it didn't work out. So good call, Bainey. I'm going to jump into mine that's sliding down the ladder. Another running back. I know this guy's been a first-round pick last couple years, and I'm not saying he's going to fall off completely. I just think he's going to slide a little bit. That's Austin Ekeler. 2 years in a row, I took him in the first round. I mean, he did not – I don't know if it was because that Brandon Staley or whatever happened over there. And again, I'm not saying he's going to be a bust or you should forget about him completely. I think he's going to do what Najee did, kind of fall down to the third, fourth round, probably third round. He hasn't looked the same. He's been dealing with some injuries as well. That's concerning. The big thing, those receptions aren't there. That's the value he brought. That's why he was that first round running back. So to me, Ekeler, I think is going to slide down a little bit.
Yeah. Age cliff is a real thing at the running back position. They tried to dispute it. He was in, those, off-season phone calls and everything, trying to get these running backs paid and stuff. And unfortunately, I think he's really been hurt all year and he's trying to play through it. And I think it's really hindered his value. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about him a little later. But it's called a teaser in the biz. But yeah, no. I love this from you. I just Eckler is a player that I think it's kind of time. The Chargers have a history of just running backs into the ground until they're no longer really valuable, and I think we might be getting closer to that. I mean, he's been a name on the long list of greats that they produced out of that backfield, but it might be time. It really might be. So
Yeah, and again, I just think he's going to drop a couple steps, not slide all the way down, but just drop a couple steps. So
I think you phrased it
my
appropriately.
opinion.
I
So,
do. I think you phrased it right.
but yeah, great segment, guys. So we are going to kick it off to the sits. So Baney, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
So I don't think it's coincidence. I wore my "No one likes us" shirt. The rest of the phrase is, we don't care. However, I think you should care about these sits because I think it could be the difference between you winning or losing your championship rounds this week.
Big money.
Or avoiding those playoff punishments, for them last place teams. So that being said, this might be off recency bias. I am benching Gardner Minshew because this Raiders defense might be legit. They've been scary these last few weeks on TV. They had Mahomes, swearing, yelling at anybody that even looked at him. Kelsey was throwing his helmet into the third row. Andy Reid shoulder checking players. Wide receivers running wrong routes. I just think Gardner Minshew it's a tough draw. It really is a tough draw this week, and I thought Gardner Minshew probably had the easiest route the rest of the way through, but Raiders are showing up to play. Antonio Pierce has these guys firing, and I think it'd be a mistake if the Raiders don't keep Pierce as their head coach moving forward, to be honest with you. I think he's done a great job. I think he's the right guy for that team. And, obviously it's different. If Pittman really plays and everything, that offense is a little different, but I think this is too tough of a draw. I'm going off recency bias. Raiders look legit right now. So, Badge.
Yeah, Minshew has been – not a lot of people think of fantasy points and think of Gardner Minshew. He's been very respectable these past 5 weeks. But like Baney touched on, I think I would like to see Antonio Pierce get that head coaching job. I think he earned it. So hopefully we see it. He brought a different fire to this team. That defense, 2 touchdowns against the Chiefs. It was
7 seconds. In 7 seconds.
That's huge. They're going to bring the heat on them. The Colts, their backs against the wall. This Chargers team, they're playing with nothing to lose, even though they're still in it statistically.
Yeah, the Raiders are still in there.
They are still in it. They'll be 8-8 if they win this game. Again, the Colts, their backs against the wall. They're going to be trying. I think they're going to be trying too hard. So yeah, that's a good sit in my book. I wouldn't want any part of Gardner Minshew this week. So jumping into my sit. So I'm mentioning this guy. I'm sitting Baker Mayfield against the Saints. And the reason I am mentioning this guy, I don't know if you guys realize, but he's been one of the hottest quarterbacks in the last few weeks fantasy-wise, believe it or not. So the last 3 games, Baker Mayfield, a guy who everyone laughed when they signed him, and I think they're going to sign him. I think they're going to roll with him next year too. The last 3 games, he threw for 8 touchdowns. So if you're a Baker owner, you're looking at this. You're paying attention to this. Since week 7, he has thrown for 20 touchdowns. That's huge. Baker really turned it on. I know Teak would be here saying I'm a huge Baker Mayfield fan. I'm really not. That was the best thing I've ever seen when he left Cleveland because that dude brings some fire. So I want to give him some credit for this. He's been very respectable these past few weeks and actually last 7-8 weeks. But for those of you guys who've caught on, I feel like this matchup's going to be that speed bump for him. The Saints have been allowing 15 points, only 15 points to fantasy quarterbacks. Again, if you're an owner, maybe you caught on. I just want to lay this out there. He's been hot. I think this is going to be a speed bump game. I would avoid his matchup this week against the Saints. That secondary has been very stingy to opposing quarterbacks. So I'm sitting Baker Mayfield this week. And again, the reason I mention that is because he's been hot.
So in your starts, on the starts episode, if you guys haven't seen the starts episode, go check that out. Drop us a like over there. I really hyped up your start at quarterback. This week, I think I gotta go the opposite way for you. I don't think Lattimore's playing. Mike Evans' history against Lattimore, he usually gets shut down. I think we see a Mike Evans blow-up week. And, yeah, dude, Baker, side by side with Mahomes right now, has better stats passing the ball this year than Mahomes. I never guessed that we would be talking about that. I'm not a Baker hater by any means. I have been probably one of his biggest fans since the Oklahoma days. That being said, I was even roasting this guy when they signed him to Tampa. The offseason tapes were terrible. Him and Trask, who was going to start, it was a mess, dude. And these last few weeks, he's just come alive. And yeah, I don't know. But like I said, the emergence of Godwin and his target share these last few weeks, and I think Mike Evans has a blow-up week this week. I kind of like Baker, to be honest with you. But like you said, man, it's a rivalry game. Matchup might not be in their favor. Could be a speed bump game. He gives you those turnovers sometimes. He's a gunslinger. It's what he does. But I think he's worth the conversation. However, I would probably play him. But
yeah, chances are if you have Baker, you got another option. I would just follow the matchup. I don't want you to get caught up in his in the past, like most fantasy owners are. Very emotional playoff, what they did last game and last few weeks. But huge shout out to Baker. So, Baney, who do you got for the sit-on running back this week?
My running back is super short, super sweet, buddy. It is Austin Ekeler. In my show notes, I usually write up some nice show notes. Dead and hurt. Those are my show notes this week for Austin Ekeler. It's just, we already talked about it a little bit. I think he's been playing through this ankle sprain. I think it's worse than we've talked about, worse than it's been covered. He looks slow. Just not what we're used to. The target share is very limited. We saw him get pretty much iced out of a game a couple weeks ago. And unfortunately, this team's just going nowhere right now. Easton Stick, not the guy. It's just a bummer. I'm super bitter too. Keenan Allen cost me my championship run this week. So out in general on the Chargers, specifically Austin Ekeler.
Yeah, Benny. I can get on board with that. We mentioned earlier in the show that he's going to climb down the ladder. Your first round pick, only 4 20-point fantasy games. He's just not the same player. They're not giving him the receptions that he normally gets. That's where you get the big points. So if you can afford to sit him, like me, I took him in the first round on one of my leagues. If you were fortunate to get like a Kyron Williams off the waivers, or you drafted him late and hung on, you might want to look that route. So I could get on board with that sit. If you can afford it. The fantasy championship, you might be able to. That's why you made it that far. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from for sure. Not the same player. So jumping into my sit, I'm going Aaron Jones against Minnesota. So Jones had a very solid week last week. The touches and the yards were both up. I'm looking past that. I'm sitting them tough matchup against the Vikings. The Vikings defense really turned it on this second half of the year, allowing only 12 fantasy points to opposing running backs. Something concerning also, A.J. Dillon took the goal line TD away from him. So I feel like with this matchup, it's going to be a 50-50 split, and A.J. Dillon's power is going to take away some of those touches, especially in the goal line. So don't want you to get bedazzled by last week. I'm sitting Aaron Jones this week against Minnesota. And again, injuries too, and so on and so forth.
Badge, I'm not kidding. The TikTok lives and stuff like that, the most common question I get between Garrett Wilson and Aaron Jones, do I sit him, do I start him, every single week. And that's just not a player come fantasy playoffs you want to be trying to figure out if you can fire up or not. It's just so frustrating. Fortunately, I haven't had any shares in Aaron Jones this season, but yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, man. It's definitely been a headache for users or owners all season long. So you might have gave me something to think about right here.
Yeah, definitely a tough matchup. And again, don't think about last week. I know it was a big step forward for him, but Baney, wide receiver, who you got as your sit?
I'm going to continue my hating trend of the Chargers. Josh Palmer. I know some recency bias. You think the Chargers, or not the Chargers, you think the Broncos are back to being dead. They've kind of struggled. However, I don't know, man. I'm a sucker for Patrick Surtain. I think that the Chargers or the Broncos defense is still decent, and I think they're at least better than what this Chargers offense has to offer. That being said, I think Stick will continue to struggle, and the targets for this offense are all over the place. Everybody kind of gets the ball. It seems like whatever's quickest and easiest. I know Palmer's their deep ball threat guy, but it's just overall way too streaky. And yeah, I just don't think this is a good matchup for the Chargers. I think the Broncos might have a get-right game, and it's going to take their defense to do it. So I think Josh Palmer, you feel comfortable sitting this week.
Yeah, Josh Palmer, too. I had him in my 14-man league, and he was kind of a spot start. He missed 6 games. If Herbert was there, maybe, but now you got Easton Stick, even though watching what Bailey Zappi did last week, yeah, to them, I mean, yeah, Palmer, like he mentioned, Surtain, yeah, that's a tough start, especially if you're in deeper leagues, 12, 14-man league. I'd probably sit him as well. You probably got, getting into the championship week, you probably have a viable option other than Palmer. So, yeah, I'm going to sit him as well, Baney.
Sick.
So I'm going to jump in to my sit-em, and I'm not sure, Baney. I think I might get a little pushback for this. So I'm excited to say it and hear what your thoughts on it. So I'm sitting Amari Cooper against the Jets. So the rule I live by, Baney, is especially in fantasy playoffs, forget what you saw last week. I know he broke franchise records. He's been hot. This is exactly why I want to start him. So the Jets, that secondary, aside from Miami, has been lights out. I mean, they're allowing 11 points to fantasy wide receivers this year. This secondary, they're quick, they're fast, they're ball hawks. They just, as soon as they catch the ball, they're all over you. Again, I don't give, excuse my French, I don't give 2 shits about last week. But shout out to Amari Cooper breaking those records. Statistically, I'm a numbers guy. I'm going with the matchup. You got to sit him this week. Baney, let me know your thoughts. Am I going to get some pushback?
Love the player. Love the combo with Flacco. However, man, this is a tough draw. So, fun fact here. I've put Amari Cooper on my sits list before. He had a monster week. I put David Njoku on my sits list. He had a career day. So I don't have a good history with sitting Browns players. Maybe this will work out better than you. However, I also don't have a good history of starts versus the Jets defense. Yeah, so that being said, man, it very well could be a really tough draw for Amari Cooper. But if the Browns win, it's because Joe Flacco's still throwing for 300 yards. That being said, he might have 3 interceptions. But I just think the Browns have proven they're going to let Flacco throw the cover off the ball. Amari Cooper's target share monster. He's their wide receiver 1. It's tough to go away from that. However, if there's a week that you are going to, it's going to be against this secondary. So,
yeah, and again, I want to let you guys make that call. I'm just going by. We're here to tell you the matchups and the numbers. I mean, you're looking at last week and like thinking to yourself, how do you sit a guy that just did that? But I feel Flacco's going to get some heat brought on him. I feel he's going to be pressured, make mistakes.
Offensive line super beat up.
You got Sauce Gardner, so we don't want to tell you like, hey, I don't know. I'm just here throwing out the stats.
Just giving the people something to think about.
Yeah. So if you got Cooper and you got a different matchup, look at the matchups. Matchups are key, especially coming into your championship week. So do take it with a grain of salt and do what you wish. But Baney, why don't you kick us off with the tight ends?
Yeah, so another guy that I only had to use one word for the show notes, Pat Fryermuth. Another dead, just dead. The offense is completely Jalen Warren, George Pickens. He was outgained last week by Darnell Washington. Any guess to Darnell Washington's stat line last week is 1 catch for 8 yards.
Yep.
He had 0 targets. He's been absolutely irrelevant for every week since he had that first game back. So, Pat Fryermuth, if for some reason you still have him on your roster, just cut him free. Let him go. Just if you love something, let it go. And by all means, if you are in love with Pat Fryermuth, the tight end, you probably need therapy because he's probably ruined your life. Just not a fan. Not a fan of the offense. I thought Rudolph coming back, maybe there would be a nice connection there. There isn't. So, Pat Fryermuth, feel good about not playing him this week.
Yeah, as a Steelers fan, I mean, watching Mason Rudolph in 2020, 2021, the guy likes to go outside. Fryermuth is more of an inside, middle of the field guy. He doesn't look that way, so getting outgained by Darnell Washington, he's more of a blocker. I wish they used him more. That guy has some hands. But, yeah, they already announced that Mason Rudolph is starting, so Fryermuth is more Pickett's guy in the middle of the field. Rudolph doesn't like to look that way. He likes to take the shots, and I don't hate that. So, Baney, yeah, I agree. Fryermuth, both these teams, Seattle and Pittsburgh, have been like wild cards. You never know what you're going to get. So, I wouldn't risk it in the championship if you got a better option. I mean, Baney mentioned start McBride, Cole Kmet.
Tucker Kraft. There's
Kraft.
options.
So, yeah, I agree. No pushback here as a Steelers fan. It just Rudolph likes to take the shots outside deep down the field, which I like because I'm not used to seeing that recently. So, yeah, I'm going to sit Fryermuth as well.
Perfect.
So, kicking it off of mine, jumping in, I'm going Dalton Kincaid against the Patriots. So, now here's a guy in my Collinsworth voice. Here's a guy that has probably helped you win a couple fantasy weeks. I know he helped me win a couple fantasy weeks in my 12-man league. So I'm a numbers guy. I mentioned that before. The Patriots have the second lowest points allowed to fantasy tight ends. So the number sits at 4. An average of 4 points. Dalton Kincaid, I mean, he had his moments, but he also had his flops. I think this is going to be a flop. I would stay far away from this matchup. I'm sitting a cold Kincaid this week. It seems like the Bills have been going more towards the run game with Cook. I don't know what's going on there. You guys all seen Diggs' stats. But, yeah, with that matchup, allowing 4 points average this late in the season, I'm sitting him against the Patriots.
As bad as the New England Patriots have been, that defense has been very, very good, consistent. There's been a lot of low-scoring games against the Pats this year. Belichick can still coach a defense, man. And their 2 best players on defense have been out for the majority of the season. That rookie cornerback they had, he might have been a shoo-in for Rookie of the Year on defense. Was it Christian Gonzalez, I believe his name is? Had a great rookie season until he got hurt. Is it Judon, I think, is also the other one that's out. So they're missing big pieces, and they're still doing what they've been doing, limiting teams. So tight end position has been brutal all season for everybody. And if you have Kincaid, I think you're going to have a head scratcher this week. So could be tough. That being said, I still think the Bills win this game. Be interesting if the Pats can play spoiler and limit this offense. But I don't know, man. Josh Allen has a cape on. Problem is you don't know who on this offense is going to, really thrive outside of Josh Allen. So, yeah, like you said, they've been running the ball surprisingly well these last few weeks. Kincaid's been up. He's been down. Gabe Davis emerges out of the shadows sometimes. I don't know, but this is a good call by you. I like this. It's a good matchup. That's a good find.
The only plus side is the Patriots have been stout against the run. So if they're going to do it, they're going to throw. So maybe you can get a Kincaid red zone touchdown or something. But I just don't want to risk those 4 points. second
Yeah,
lowest. That's my thoughts. So
that's hard to get over. That really is.
Do what you wish, But Baney, why don't you go ahead and send us away? Week 17.
Guys, like you said, week 17, years flying by. We've seen some growth in our subscribers these last few weeks, so you might be new to the channel. If you're seeing us for the first time today, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button, get the notifications. We do 3 episodes a week. Badge makes you a whole bunch of money on our betting show. That's the Against the Spread that drops on Wednesday. Starts, sits, Thursday, Friday. It all drops at noon. So hit the subscribe button, make bell go ding, and also check us out. Use the Underdog Fantasy app. Use promo code Let Them Know. Deposit match up to $100. It's free money. Badge always says it. If it's free, it's me. That's coming from your favorite fantasy football Italian, so you know it's official. So please, thoughts and prayers, drop them in the chat for Teak. He's sick. He couldn't be with us, but he'll be back next week stronger than ever. So thank you guys for everything. Hit the subscribe button, and we're out.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Let 'Em Know Fantasy Football Podcast. Join our community and follow us on all socials, or keep up with the episodes on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.